Everyone, I'd like to review the Reading 21 study questions, the first reading from the Quran. Let me say that whenever we come across a text of another time, we are coming to it as a kind of an outsider. And one of the reasons that there's a payoff in doing maybe continued study in any category of literature is that we gradually sort of get to the inside. Maybe we never totally get there because it's a different time, a different culture, and we can never truly sort of think like a person of that time and culture. It's the same with the ancient Greeks, medieval Europe, 19th century America or England or France, ancient Mesopotamia. But then there are texts that we really feel we don't feel qualified to interpret because we haven't done enough work in them. And they come from a different tradition. And so, in addition to the difficulties of just reading the text, we have all sorts of difficulties in trying to read it rightly. And again, maybe that's a problem that we come across with almost everything we read. But I find that there are some texts that I find more difficult, and the Quran is one of them. I hesitate to even say anything definitive about the meaning of the Quran. I've spent time with it over the years. I have never read the whole Quran, and I don't know Arabic, and that's a big issue. I would say a bigger issue with the Quran than the other, I would say, than the other religious texts that we've read. Especially the Christian texts. I mean, in Christianity, there's not a great emphasis on knowing ancient Greek or the Koinos or common Greek that it was written in. Christians don't really feel any particular need to know Greek to read the Christian scriptures. I think that it's different in the Jewish tradition with Hebrew, and it's especially different in the Islamic tradition with Arabic. I've had Muslim students who said after being given a passage of the Quran translated in English, saying this is not the Quran, and I have respect for that. And that is the Quran's in Arabic. It's a different sort of thing. It's important that it's in Arabic for the tradition. I think I know that about it, and I respect it. So the question, which is a long way of saying that I'm trying to keep the study questions quite open, because I don't really have anything definitive to say. I have my responses to reading the Quran, my puzzlements, and I'm just sort of passing them on to you, and I don't really have any base of knowledge in Arabic literature, Quran especially, that would give me any kind of authority. So just to let you know, number one, chapter 2 begins, "This is the book in which there is no doubt." Why, in your opinion? I suppose from the first moment that I read the Quran, that being more or less the first line that I ever read, I've been struggling with that question ever since. Why would a book essentially begin telling you not to doubt it, that this is the book in which there is no doubt? I don't know exactly how to take it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a definitive interpretation of that. But I can't help but think that it's important, and that it's a very strange thing, and in one way, but not a very strange thing in another way. That it's a very strange thing for a book to say everything, essentially saying everything you're about to read is true and you must accept it. I don't think I have ever seen anything similar at the beginning of any book that I've ever read. At the same time, if we think about what the Quran is, or purports to be, is the Word of God, the direct Word of God. Muhammad was simply the medium of God. This is the idea. Muhammad didn't compose the Quran. Muhammad simply recited, which I believe is what Quran means, recital, the words that God gave him. So if we put it in that context, starting it off by saying, well, this is the Word of God, of course there's no doubt. There's nothing in here is to be doubted. It makes more sense. So I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying that that is I guess I'm ambivalent about it. The first line, essentially the first line of the Quran, being both something that seems unreasonable and something that seems totally reasonable. Number two, verse 164 is in the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the alternation of night and day, in the ships that sail the oceans for the benefit of mankind, in the water that God sends down from the sky and revives the earth with it after it had died, and scatters in it all kinds of creatures, in the changing of the winds and the clouds disposed between the sky and the earth, are signs for people who understand. So, what do you take to be its meaning? Ged, just putting the ideas out there. I thought it was a particularly interesting passage. As an outsider reading the Quran, what I take as to be one of the most prominent things is really a demand for faith and a frustration. Excuse me, I just have to stop for a moment to answer the phone. I know this is quite rude, but it's an important phone call. Be right back with you. Sorry for the interruption. I think what I was getting at is that as an outsider coming upon the Quran for the first time, one of the things I really noticed was that there was a real frustration on the part of God who's speaking, that anybody would not believe in him and the faith. But here it's a little different because what I believe this is pointing out that there are all sorts of signs in nature that God exists, in the way that God has set up the world to be convenient for human beings. And so these are signs. I think that is the most important word here, that these are signs. That the way that the waters and the winds go, the way that the rain brings forth the crops, and everything is signs for reasonable people or people who understand. I think I read another translation where people who understand was reasonable men or reasonable people. The obviousness of God's existence. So I think that this is an interesting passage. The meaning I take it to be is that even for those who aren't particularly faithful, they just need to look at nature and see that God exists. That God has shaped nature for the benefit of human beings, which is a very ancient belief that transcends any particular religion. So I thought it was a particularly interesting passage in that respect.